Hey there everybody, my name is Nuoance and today we are talking about the good old days of content warnings. You know them, you love them, or you ignore them. As somebody who gets triggered from a range of different questionable content, horror maps are almost impossible to go through because of the fear they induce and the lack of trust I have with creators who make them. You know who you are. Less jump scare horror maps and more ambience. Surprisingly enough, not enough creators place enough content warnings on their worlds, which can cause a player to have a negative reaction. For example, a few worlds I explored last week with some friends ended up having bright flashes with absolutely zero flash warnings. Now, some people are confused why exactly we would need a flash warning inside a game where you're putting lights literally up against your eyes. Firstly, people react differently to different stimuli. Recently, I saw a video on TikTok where a keyboard was switching between colors at a very low and moderate pace, but it was just enough to send another person in the call into a seizure. Other people wouldn't be as bothered. I knew one person in this game who was epileptic, and as long as he was careful with what worlds he went to, he was okay. So there are people who can handle VR but still run the risk of seizure. Secondly is light sensitivity. I have light sensitivity. I keep my VR brightness between 30 to 50% on average, depending on the world. Bright lights blind me easily, and it can be hard to recover from that. Worlds with dark settings but high bloom are the absolute worst for me, because someone's shoestrings are brighter than the whole damn world, and even if it's just a small piece of my view, that shoestring will take over and make it impossible for me to see anything but that. A quick warning to those who are ready to comment, if they run the risk of seizure, they shouldn't play. People who are light sensitive, epileptic, or have general triggers in the world are allowed to have fun as well. Yes, you have to be smarter with where you go, who you trust, and what you do, but having a disability or trauma isn't grounds to cut off the game for good. Most people just want to enjoy themselves like everyone else. Even the Oculus store has content warnings before you get a game, letting you know if the motion controls are going to be low or high, so if you get motion sick easily, you know not to play the game ahead of time. These aren't the only kinds of warnings worlds have, though. Most horror maps will have some level of content warning because stories and scares are within their walls and are usually horrifying to a certain degree. Some adventure maps will also have audio warnings so that streamers can understand there may be a copyright issue when posting the video elsewhere or to take down the video after the stream. There's also the standard warning in certain worlds like Trap Haven and previously just B Club, which gives a reminder to players that some content in the world is not appropriate for all ages. Finally, we have the most popular warning you see at clubs, which is to ask all users to switch into a more optimized model to make things easier for everyone. Warnings in worlds aren't unheard of. However, for the information they're giving you, it's shocking to me how often they get ignored and brushed aside. I personally know plenty of people who have gone out of their way to let Raksha know that they didn't bother to read her rules, then have the audacity to tell her she needed a flashing light warning at the start of the world, which, as you can clearly see, there is one. On the rules that they skipped. Raksha's world has something great, which is a punishment for those who don't read the rules. Firstly, if you didn't read them and just clicked the right entry button, you'll fall through the floor and get told off for not reading the full warning. It's always funny seeing people fall to their death over and over because they don't bother to read the rules. She actually took a video opening night, which is what you're seeing now, where it showcased people falling pretty rapidly because they just wanted to get into the world. Some just ended up leaving because they thought the world was broken. Of course, there is also the other side of this predicament, which is how much liability should go to the creator compared to the player themselves. Some worlds will have warnings to remind the player to check where they are IRL before playing a map that needs a lot of movement. Many walls, tables, expensive VR equipment, etc. have met their ends due to the negligence of the player themselves, and I wonder how many people take the blame willingly or try to push it onto somebody else. This was a concern some stranger had, and brought up to Raksha that she was responsible if a player in her map decided to drink and drive or drink past their limits, pass out, and die. There is a limit to what you can expect a world creator can do, and they aren't going to be like bartenders and be able to keep an eye on every single person who uses their world. This man legitimately tried to argue that she should be responsible for keeping every person in drinking night sober and safe, and if she can't handle that responsibility, she should take the world down. I am still infuriated with this conversation because not only did he just straight up say that people who are shy are not allowed to make up good worlds because they can't take criticism, but also because he refused to take his own friend accountable for her reckless actions and instead tried to demonize my friend who only made the world originally to have fun with her friend group. We see this often in the real world, especially with entitled brats who think they can push any issue off to somebody else. Videos of Karens and boomers are rampant on the internet, with a large chunk of them mainly involving the problem person throwing a temper tantrum because the people wouldn't bend to their needs or take the fall for their mistakes. We see dumb rules all the time and laugh at them because they just make no sense. In reality, those rules and regulations had to be made because someone was dumb enough to do the thing that seems obvious. It sucks, it's sad that bad things happen, but sometimes you never know what could be dangerous until someone is foolish enough to try it. This is the nature of human error, and of course creators aren't going to be able to avoid every single negative interaction. They can mediate it, sure, but at some point all those rules will become a hindrance more than a help, and people will be less likely to read them because of how many there are. The creator, in my opinion, is responsible for the main warnings, like triggers, lights, content, the usual. Anything past that is on the players themselves to act like a decent human being. Though, this is all just my opinion, and for this video, I'm not about that. So I went back out to the expansive world of VRChat and decided to try and interview regular players and get their opinions on content warnings and how important they think they are. Do you usually read the text left by creators in their world?
At some point, not always the first time, but at some point I will end up reading it. Not always the first time, to be honest, but like eventually I will end up like... So like just B Club, for example, like I didn't read that for like the first like 20 times loading in, and then one time I was like, I'm just gonna read it. I'm just gonna give it a quick read.
No.
No.
I didn't realize there was any in most of them. I think in some of them, I just click OK. I'm just like, mesh. Let me in the world.
If it's like event world, obviously I read all the stuff because I don't want to shout at it. So if it's like an event going on in the Pacific world, I'll always read them. Like any tags that are up or anything like that. But if I kind of just go into a public world for the most part, nah.
What do you think could be done to make you more likely to read a content warning?
Publish an academic journal.
Not really, no.
Yeah, not really.
Okay, actually, do you know, this was a really good example. Having something where, like, you're clicking on a button and it doesn't do what you think the button's going to do because it's described somewhere in the text. Because it's like, well, if everyone had that kind of thing, you'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to read it just so, even if it's just so I can get into the world without having to, you know, be sent falling through the floor.
I guess I don't know. For whatever it is, I'm probably just going to try and mash through it.
What about horror maps? People don't usually consider horror maps having content warnings, but most, if not all of them, do have some kind of warning about what the video or the show, game, map, whatever it is. Do you read any of those?
I do.
I will for flash warnings.
I do, but I kind of, not so much read, more so skim. Like, I'll just skim, like, blah, 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 okay, yep, kind of thing. Like, I'll just skim over it real quick, because for myself, I don't really have any, like, phobias, I don't have any problems with, like, anything like that. Like, I don't find horror maps scary. Like, I literally can go through an entire horror... I play horror VR games and stuff like that. I've never been even phased once, so...
For horror, I probably do. Because there's some stuff I don't really like seeing.
Have you ever been in a world that should have had a warning?
I guess I'm kind of desensitized to most pop-out things, so I can't really think of any maps I've been to that I've been like, this should have been warned about.
I think a lot of the dance clubs should have warnings because they are literally just ERP worlds masquerading as clubs.
Oh, 100%. There's so many, like, lap dance world, like the ones that have, like, the strip clubs and all that, and they don't have a single warning in them. And, like, you go into, like, a room, and it's like a cage, and, like, I don't know, like a stripper pole, and, like, there's, like, fucking chains and stuff, and it's just like, oh my god, like, why is this, like, why can anyone just come in here and look at this without even, like, a warning, at least, you know? Now,
this next part is a two-part question, so I will ask the first part, then the second. If something happens to a player in a world, let's say they hurt themselves when drinking too much, is it the responsibility of the world owner to have made a warning beforehand?
No, because you could drink in VRChat, you could drink in any world too much. And that's, so you can't... When it comes to drinking, it's all on yourself, I think. So for that specific example, if you were drinking, you heavily drank, you fell over in your VR and got hurt, you can't blame the world. Even drinking worlds, I wouldn't say you can blame them because you should always be drinking within your limits. Even if people are telling you to drink more, you should know, nope, I've had enough. If I drink any more, I'm in danger of hurting myself. It's like drink driving.
No.
I mean, okay, so I do a little bit of like bartender research if I ever have the chance to go into bartending. And if I remember correctly, if you overserve a customer and let them out, you know, driving and they get into a wreck, it is the bartender's fault for them getting into a wreck. So I would say, yeah, maybe on that one.
I mean, if they hurt themselves on their own actions, then I'm not really sure what kind of warning would be able to prevent that.
Okay.
Because I mean, there's please drink responsibly everywhere, and not everyone drinks responsibly.
I mean, when it comes to the like the drinking game stuff, I would agree with the bartenders. Yeah, if the bartender continues to put someone past obvious inebriation, that is a problem. But to me, it's not the creator's work. It's not the creator's job to be able to police what everybody does when so many people drink and do drugs. You can't stop that from happening in VRChat.
What about for worlds that triggers or bright lights?
Oh yeah, you should definitely say if it's an epileptic thing.
Yeah, so if you have like bright lights in your world, flashing lights, stuff like that, you should always have, I think you should have warnings at least. Even if people don't read them, have the warnings there, so then someone can't be like, yo, your world gave my friend like a seizure. It's like, well, there's literally a giant warning at the beginning saying not to do it, so it's not my fault, you didn't read it.
Medical history, yeah, that would be a good idea, you know?
Yeah, I think flash warning specifically for epilepsy, seizure type stuff, it is the world's creator's responsibility to do anything that could be medically problematic.
What is your opinion on content warnings in general, just in VRChat?
I think they're a good idea, but pointless as most people don't bother to read them or even follow them when they do read them.
Yeah.
My opinion on it, I think honestly any content that should require a warning should even though again I am guilty myself of not reading them or ignoring them or just hitting the OK button, and you should still have them there if a world's something that's deemed needing it, like drinking. You should just be like, hey, this is a drinking themed world, blah 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 blah, you know, or hey, this is a horror map, have them there. Hey, this map could be prone, like anything. It's literally like, again, even though I'm guilty, it takes about 15 seconds to read it. It's not that hard, and it can keep you safe.
I think they're important for people who have things that they need to be aware of, or they need to protect themselves about. So they definitely serve an important purpose there. I'm just quite lucky in that not much shakes me anymore, or the things that shake me can't really get to me through VR, so I can kind of blunder in with blissful ignorance and kind of deal with any surprises that might come along the way, but for certain people that's not always an option.
I also did a very last minute poll, as you've been seeing through the video, just to see what general people's opinions were of content warnings. Surprisingly, most are pretty unanimous on their answers. Really, the only thing that was split was the debate if the map maker is responsible for a player's actions in said map if they don't have content warnings, which was an interesting take. I can understand the argument, but I am going to still be on the side that no world creator is responsible for someone's actions if they do dumb stunts in your world. It's also really refreshing to see that at least with my poll, everyone agreed that flash warnings are a must. Finally, I did ask a friend of mine, Lee Fritzton, a few separate questions regarding content warnings. See, we know flash warnings are a must. People's lives could be at risk because someone forgot to mention a sudden flash. I've had quite a few times myself where I've gotten into a world and suddenly there's a big bright light. It can hurt. However, there are other situations you have to take into account. Leaf is deaf and has their own channel focusing on how to go through VRChat as a deaf player. With so many worlds being focused on adventures like Rawr's Rides, Magic Heist, Huggy Dungeon series, many of them focus on the audio-based cues or speaking without subtitles for the stories. This could make things difficult to navigate for players who are hard of hearing or perhaps turn off world audio for their own personal reasons. Also, I just realized that probably sounds wrong. I'm not saying that none of them use subtitles. I'm pretty sure Magic Heist does, but I'm using them as adventure examples. Something that Leaf brought up that I would have never thought about was the fact that sometimes when going through a world without a way for players to communicate minus their voice, it can make things difficult. I went to look back at some of my own videos doing maps similar and yeah, there's a lot of times when we have to communicate from a distance. Though that should be saved for another video entirely because accessibility in itself is a super deep and complex topic. In terms of content warnings, having a spot where subtitles could be an option, or at least a warning for those who are hard of hearing, would make these maps heavily more accessible, or at least let the player know that there are going to be parts where they use their ears if necessary. Therefore, they should wait to come back with friends, or just do a different map. Though, what about you, viewer? Do you care if someone uses content warnings in their world? Should every world have one, or is it only special instances? As usual, I love hearing the different opinions, and I want to see what everyone thinks in the comments. Personally, I don't see the problem with having one in every single world, especially if people started using a consistent look, or maybe a consistent logo, with content warnings. If a world creator feels like their world has nothing that needs to be warned about, then they can just have the warning blank, or just say have fun, or it's just a hangout world. I think that would make it so much easier for players who are skittish or need those warnings to know that they aren't going to be jump scared or, taken by surprise. Everybody has their triggers, and everybody has something that may affect them differently than other people. Unfortunately, it is impossible for a creator to have trigger warnings for every single little thing that somebody is triggered by. And I'm not saying that in a way that people are not valid with their triggers. I am afraid of whales, and people make fun of me all the time because whales are a popular theme throughout VRChat to use as a symbol of peace and comfort. The amount of times I've been into worlds that have whales floating around and I've freaked out is insurmountable. It is a standard animal people use as comfort that I see as pain. Unfortunately, triggers are unique for every single person. People can be triggered by doors, by door handles, by pillows. Like, look around, there is something that you are seeing right now that you wouldn't expect to be a trigger to somebody else, and it could possibly be because of their personal experiences in their personal life. People make fun of me all the time about my whale fear, but what they don't see is my point of view of it, which is the fact that whales would have no idea they're killing us while they're killing us. An entire human life, my entire human life, could be just gone without a single shred of belief. With a lion, at least they would kill me, they'd get something out of it, they would eat out of it, and they were targeting me on purpose. A whale did not do that on purpose. I am nothing to them. I am just there and gone. They would have no idea. It would be extremely difficult for everyone to be able to properly guess what somebody is triggered by. But I do fully believe, as I said, that content warnings are important and should be in the world. And if we had some kind of universal way to show what these content warnings are, either by, like I said, a logo, maybe a special poster board, I don't know, something of that sort, it would definitely help in the future for those who would look for it. And for the people who don't care, they'd see the symbol, realize it's just a content warning, and move on. It would work out great for both sides. As per usual, make sure to drink your water, eat your broccoli, and have a fantastic day. See y'all in the next video.